ripple effect. What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Brendas, also known as Ricky Rants. And today we have a Patreon podcast. If you guys aren't familiar with these Ripple Effect Podcast, Patreon podcasts, what they are is I get together with my Patreon supporters once a month and connect with them. They get to connect with each other. And we basically just do a real episode. I release it as a actual Ripple Effect Podcast episode. So for as little as $1 a month, you can support the show and you can get on a episode. So you'll be able to listen to yourself on iTunes or any other places you listen to podcasts, and you'll be able to contribute to the conversation. And like I said, connect with myself and other listeners. I never know who's going to show up. Sometimes a bunch of people, sometimes a few. You never really know, so it always makes it fun and a little nerve-wracking because I don't obviously want to talk to myself for the whole episode, and I always try to find times and days that works for everybody in our super busy schedules. So today we're doing another Patreon podcast. Of course, there's plenty of other ways you can support the show, and you'll find that in the show description. In the show description, you'll find the links to all that. And you can also go to my website, rippleeffectpodcast.com. And there is another spot where you can find all the ways of supporting the show. And of course, like I always tell you guys, this is a value for value show. So if you get some value out of the Ripple Effect podcast and all the work that I put into bringing you guys interesting shows and interesting guests, please consider giving some value back. If it's not financial, don't worry about it. I know many of us aren't in good financial situations. Try to contribute by, and I know I say it doesn't have to be financial, but you can support as little as $1 a month. If a small percentage of the listeners contribute as little as $1 a month, I would have easily enough income to do this full time. So if everybody can just contributes a little bit, it goes a long way. But if you can't, like I said, you can rate, review, tell people about the show, and that also goes a long way. So that's it with the intro. Let me get right into the show. I believe I have some people waiting, so let me start figuring out who's waiting and who's going to be joining us, and we'll go from there. I'm sure we'll see some new faces, some familiar faces, hopefully a little bit of everything. And here we go. We're connecting. What's up, dude? Oh, he's still connecting. Taylor. Boom. Can you hear me? It says it's still connecting audio. Huh. Just give it a second.
There, did you get it?
Boom. Yes, we're there.
Hi, Ricky.
What's up, dude?
Not much. What's up with you?
So where are you calling from? I always say calling. I hesitate to say calling because I'm like, it's not a radio show, but
yeah. I'm from Minnesota, southern Minnesota.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I was actually just talking to a friend of mine who is a big Vikings fan and is going there for a game.
Look at right there. I'm a big Vikings fan too.
I just noticed that.
Yeah.
So yeah, he loves the city. He said that it's an awesome place, and it gives him a reason to go there and watch the Vikings.
Yeah, I've been to they have a relatively new stadium, and I've been there twice now. But I had a chance to get tickets today, but like I tell everybody, I said my recliner and a cold beer is much more comfortable than squished into some hard seats, and but it's a good thing to experience once or twice. But at home is usually where I prefer it.
I'm with you 100%. growing up, I used to love going to concerts, love going to, live events. But as you get older, it beats you up. It's such a long day. And it's a huge investment because like everything
Yeah.
is so expensive. You go to a show, it's like, or a game, it's like, oh, the ticket was only this. And then next thing you know, by the time you grab food and you parking and all that stuff, I'm like, I should have went to a resort for this money. It's like,
Right.
uh,
Yeah, I used to go to a lot of rap concerts when I was really young. Well, not really young, but younger. And then it went from going to a concert, which was fun, and then evolved into going to rap festivals. And that festival, like, it's a great thing to experience, but you're just exhausted at the end of the day. You're sunburnt. Me, I would smoke weed the whole time I'm there. So at the end, I'm just burnt out, and it's a great experience. I'm glad glad I did it all, but I've grown out of that phase for sure.
yeah, I'm the same way. I used to go to Warp Tour every year
Yeah, sure.
back in well, because then when Ozfest stopped, Warp Tour would like gather all the cool metal bands. So I would go, but dude, you would need like a week of recovery because
Yeah.
you're dehydrated because water is like the same price of gold. So it's like
Yep.
you're drinking minimum water. Chances are you're having alcoholic beverages, which only dehydrates you more. You're in
Yep.
and Warp Tour when it would come to Hartford, it was always like I swear it was like the hottest day of the summer. It was always like a day.
Yeah. Right.
It always seemed like that. It's like every time I went, it was like the hottest day of the summer, not one cloud in the sky, just beaming on you all day. There's no shade anywhere. And it's like you feel like you got hit by a truck. I mean, and it is one of those things where like you got to do it once. Like you got to at least do it a few times. It's fun from time to time. Because the cool thing about festivals, it's an opportunity to see a bunch, and that's why I would go because during the year, like sometimes you get busy or sometimes you just don't go to you can't go to the shows you want to go to. And then at the festival, I would be able to basically suck it up and see all of them in one place. So it's like, oh, I get to see Devil Wears Prada, I get to see Archetypes, I get to see like all these bands all in one place at the same time. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm good for shows for a while because I got to see all these guys. But there is something too about seeing them in like a actual, like at the Webster, the Palladium, or whatever, where outdoor festivals are fun, but the quality is never quite as good. It's a shorter set. They don't get to bring all their own lights and setup and stuff like that. So there's pros and cons to it. But yeah, with sports, I'm the same way. Like I like going to a Celtics game every year. I like going to a soccer game or two if I can, every year. But watching it at home, it's like you can pay, if you're really into it, watching at home where you can actually pay attention, you're not distracted. And the second the game's done, I can just hit power and go to bed. Where like
Yep.
it's like you're exhausted, you tailgate, you're exhausted after the game. Now you got to drive. Like in my case, if I'm going from the Boston area, I got to drive like almost an hour and a half home late at night. So I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm like, my night's not even over. And so you end up being where it's like at home with high def TVs. If you have a decent TV and
Yeah.
you're walking distance from a fridge that has all the things you want, it's like, it's way cheaper to just stay and I can enjoy it just as much. And a lot of times just the analysts and people talking, like
Right.
yeah, like you miss out on that. You're watching it live and like, what the hell just happened? Anybody
Yeah. It's almost like if you're not paying attention, you're gonna miss half a series or a couple plays, and most of the time, depending on where you're sitting, you're watching the jumbotron anyway, which is not the greatest quality. And it's like I said, it's a good experience, but just like you, I'd rather be at home in my comfort zone watching it.
Yeah, I got two little ones, so I love they've been to the Celtics. I think last time they went to the Celtics was before 2020. It must have been like 2019. They went to their first Celtics game, but I'd love for them to go now because they're a little older and I think they'll remember it a little better. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I'll go like once a year with them for the experience. But if I didn't have, I might not even go if I didn't have kids. I'd probably, I'm like, I'm good. Maybe get together, make it a day with the wife, like go out to eat or get together with some buddies and
Hmm.
make a day out of it. It's just an excuse to kind of go to Boston and hang out and go out to eat. But I'm with you, man. I pay attention. To me, if you're a true fan and you want to pay attention, at home's the best place. Like people will sometimes,
Yeah.
oh, you want to go to the bar and watch like the big game? Like, no, not if it's one of my teams, because I'm like, everybody's talking, nobody's paying attention until something big happens, and everybody cheers like they were watching. I'm like, none of you
Yeah.
watching, you know. So it's better at home. But oh, I saw, what is that? Alice Cooper shirt. Speaking of music,
Yep.
it's funny. I was just thinking about Alice Cooper and Marilyn Manson and some of the shock rock bands, because I'm like, I think I'm getting old, because I'm seeing some of the shock rock and influences in like modern music now, with like what was it, that was it a VMAs where like that rapper uh end up like kissing like Satan or something like that, and everybody's going crazy. And it was one of, like, he did some live performance where he was like, he's called Little something. Is it Little Nas? I think it was, might have been Little Nas.
They're all little.
Yeah, you're right. Like that. Yeah, I'm just making up names, and it could probably be some.
You're probably right.
It's probably, there probably is a Little Nas. So I think Little Nas, and I remember thinking, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, these kids who are watching this shit. I'm like, what are you doing? And then it hit me. I'm like, wait, Alice Cooper and Marilyn Manson. I'm like, I grew up with that, and you know, even hip hop. You said you grew up with hip hop. I mean, they would
Mhm.
push the boundaries quite a bit too. And so, what's your guys' feelings on it? Are we getting old? Or you guys look at modern music and you're like, you know what, it's okay pushing the boundaries?
I think we are getting old, regardless of our our opinions on music, just in life. But I think you said the same thing. Like I look at today's music and I'm like, God, I'm a true hip hop head. I have been and I always will be. And there's different genres in hip hop that I'll subscribe to more than others. But like today's music here, it's all about drugs and sex and just. But then that's how it was back in the day. And so is that to say that like like for instance, I listened to 3 6 Mafia, and a lot of that was about drugs and codeine and all that. But I didn't grow up, I like that music just for the how it sounded in my car and everything. But I didn't grow up letting that influence me to the point where that's what I went to do. I smoked a little weed here and there, but as a youth, who didn't? So I look at today's music like, yeah, they're doing all the same stuff, but are the kids following in those footsteps, thinking that life is accessible and achievable versus maybe some of my generation who just saw it more as entertainment and not real life? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to know if it's just our perspective as older people, like thinking
Right.
that the music today is influencing the youngings more than the music of our time was influencing us. But I mean, I grew up. I mean, I listened to Cannibal Corpse. I remember like their music was fucking crazy. I mean, they would literally
Mm-hmm.
write songs about things that you would see in a horror movie, and their covers were always like super gory. And I was a big Slipknot fan growing up too, and their first album was like super dark, and to me it was like I liked depressing music. I liked angry music. I think when you're young, that represents a lot of how you feel at the moment. Like you don't have any freedom in many cases. Like your parents tell you what to do, what you can't do, and you have a lot of social issues with like maybe not fitting in or whatever. And as an adult, when you get older and you deal with other issues, you look at kids and you're like, dude, that's not a real problem, or that's not really something to be down about. But
Right.
in that moment, from that perspective, it is a real problem, and it's everything to you. It's the biggest problem, right? Like if you have friends that don't like you, or you have some issue at school with some kids, like it's the biggest deal ever, because you haven't grown up and dealt with these other things that might be more important. So to you, that is more important. But yeah, it's always weird because and I don't know if it's because the conspiratorial part of me, thinking like it's being used as a weapon, and it's
Mm-hmm.
used to influence the thinking of children, which obviously we know to some extent it's happening. And then I'm like, well, they probably did the same thing when we were growing up. There's always been the debate about gangster rap. Like, was it pushed onto the public to get people to think that gangster lifestyle is sexy, and then justify locking them up because it's like Yeah, being a gangster is cool. By the way, now we're gonna lock you up, and you have this giant record, and you can't get a job, and we're gonna
Right.
take you away from your kids, and your kids probably going to end up being a gangster because we took you away from your kids. So now it's only a one parent, and that poor mother has to do everything on her own, and you're going to end up being raised by the streets, right? Because she's working two jobs. So it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell if that was accidental, if that was on purpose. I know people will argue both sides, but I wonder if similar things are happening now. What do you think, Jeff? Can you hear us, Jeff?
I can hear you.
What do you think about music? Do you think, for the most part, kids can look at it as just entertainment, and it doesn't? Because I listen to some crazy shit. I mean, I listen to industrial. I listen like some real dark industrial stuff. Suicide Commando, who is like this. I mean, some artists that talk about and I mean, literally, it would sound like the soundtrack to a horror movie, and it didn't make me want to kill anybody. It didn't make me want to, do anything crazy. So do you think for the most part you can look at something like Alice Cooper, you can enjoy that and shock rock and kind of detach entertainment from music, or do you think that it could potentially do some harm to society?
I don't think it can do any harm to society, at least in my opinion. I can separate. Uh, I don't let it consume me to where I got to be like that or and stuff. But yeah, I can see where the music that these kids listen to today is just unreal. And it's just I hear that and I'm like, in my mind I'm like, turn that shit off. I just I don't know, man. I'm pretty just like one track in my music. I don't explore into other types of music. I stay in my genre and that's it.
But do
You
you?
know,
Oh, go ahead, Jeff. I mean, Taylor.
one thing too is the kind of music you and I were probably listening to when we were younger is we probably weren't listening to it when we were 6, 7, 8 years old. Versus when I was younger, I was listening to music mainly when I got my license, and maybe the brain's a little bit more developed at that age versus kids today that can access it as soon as they can get online. So it might have a little different influence just by the development of your brain at that age of your life too.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a really good point. Yeah, that is a really good point because not I don't remember buying albums and stuff until a little later in life, where,
Yeah.
like you said, now kids are like 7, they're on YouTube and
Mm-hmm.
satanic mumble rap that's polluting,
Right.
having some effect. But okay, so let me play the devil's advocate. If Wouldn't people say, like the adults of our time, say that our music was like turn that shit off?
100%.
Jeff, you get pushback from your parents?
Oh, I did. I mean, because my parents all they listened to was that country music and that bluegrass stuff and everything. And as a kid, I can remember it would just infuriate me. I would just be like, that's why I went down the path that I went down just to kind of rebel.
Yeah, my parents listen to Portuguese music, which is basically like just our version of polka. That's the way I looked at it. And it's like a combination of polka and like Latin music. It's like there's Latin influence and then there's like polka influence because of the accordions and stuff like that. But yeah, same thing. Like my parents wanted me to, when I started playing music, like, oh, you should learn how to play Portuguese music. I'm like, no, that shit sucks. I'm like, I want to learn. I want to know how to thrash. Big Iron Maiden fan, Metallica fan. Those There's something about metal that really got. But what, it's funny, I always liked anything that went against the grain. I still listen to a little bit of hip hop, low key from the UK, a lot of UK guys, and but it to me, like, I liked anything that went against the grain, anything that was outside the norm, anything that pushed back, anything that was kind of rebellious, because I was the same way. I didn't like to kind of go with the herd. I like to be a little different. And but yeah, music's, it's weird because even with my kids, like, So okay, so let me go back to what I was going to say about being the devil's advocate. Horror movies, right? Like maybe we didn't get exposed to music at a young age, but some of us were watching horror movies at a really young age. We down the street from where I lived, there was a place called Video Rentals, and it was just you go rent videos, VHSs and whatnot. And my parents spoke very little English, so we would my brother and I would go there. They know us because the bus stop was at the place, and we do the owner. We'd go there all the time, and we would try to rent like PG-13 or rated R movies. And he's like, "Oh, you guys are too young for that." I'm like, "No, no, my parents don't care." They're like, "Okay, well, next time you come with your parents, if they're okay with it, I'm okay with it." So I, I next time I come in with my parents, I tell my mom, I think it was my mom. I'm like, "Hey, mom," I'm like, "Can you just let them know that it's okay for me to?" And I'm speaking in Portuguese. I'm like, "Let them know that it's okay for me to rent movies if you're not here." And I didn't tell her rated R or PG. I just said rent movies. And and then he's like, I'm like, and she's like, yeah, yeah, he can grab movies, like that's what she says to him. So I got the okay to get rated R movies because he thought it was okay. So I would watch I was a big, weirdly enough, for some weird reason, I was a Freddy Krueger fan. I don't know why, but Nightmare on Elm Street was like my go-to horror movie. I thought it was the creepiest thing ever, but it was I like his sense of humor, weirdly enough. I'm like, he's like a psychopath with a sense of humor. And but I remember watching Jason and Hellraiser and all the old horror movies. And I'm like, did it scare me? Of course it did. I was a kid a little bit, but it never really had any psychological damage, like. So I wonder if even kids who are listening to this music, if eventually they'll grow out of it. Because most of us grow out of horror movies. When I met my wife, all she wanted to watch was horror movies when we started dating, and which was frustrating because 5 minutes into the horror movie, she's like, "I can't watch this. We got to turn off." I'm like, "Hey, this was your idea." I'm like, "You wanted to watch this, and 5 minutes into every horror movie, you want to turn it off." I'm like, "Now we got to pick another movie," And so a lot of times I'm like, "No, no, we're getting through this," And but yeah, and then it got to a point where she didn't want to watch them anymore. She kind of grew out of it. So it is weird, that whole thing of like, okay, does the next generation music suck, or is it just me being old and just think like not getting it? Because it's almost like a cultural thing when
Mm-hmm.
you go to another culture, right? Like there might be music that's really big in that culture that you're like, okay, country music, right? I don't know about you two, but I hate country. I'm sure I pissed off some listeners, but I hate country. Like there's music I can tolerate. I can't tolerate country. Like
Nope.
I don't get the appeal of it. They all sound, sorry, Southern people, but they all sound super dumb, and the lyrics, I mean, it's literally just like shitty pop with a country accent. Like it's just like, I'm like, this is just pop with a country accent. I'm like, there's nothing country about this, and it all sounds the same. And I'm like, it's pop music. It's dumb pop music. And but again, if I grew up in that culture where like I wore country boots and I got a I don't know, Confederate flag on my pickup truck, and then maybe I'd get it. It's same thing if I grew up in China, there's probably parts of that culture that I would love. Or food's another example, right? Like if I grew up in China, I'd grow up loving Chinese food. I don't care for Chinese food. I grew up eating Portuguese food. Like, so it's like, is it just they grew up in that era? They get it to an extent that we can't, because we're like kind of outsiders looking in. And to me, I've always loved trying to keep up with new genres. I'm not one of those people, like there's still music I listen to that's older, but I don't listen to too much Maiden and Metallica anymore. Like I'm like, I've listened to my whole fucking life. Like I'm done with that. Like who's a cool new band? Like who's the band like pushing the boundaries? There's a band called The Browning. I remember when they came, or even Asking Alexandria when they first came out. Like they were one of the first bands that were like doing a lot of like, they were combining metalcore with like keyboards, and it was just like really different at the time. Now it's been redone quite a bit, but at the time, like, oh, this is really different, and I loved it just because it was different and new, and it was a new genre. So I'm the opposite of like most people as they get older. Like I just keep wanting to know like what's new, what's in, like because musicians will push boundaries, and I'm always curious like where's music now. I look at it as like the X Games. Like I growing up, I BMX and skateboard, so I loved the X Games, and then I didn't watch the X Games for years. Like once I got my license, I'm like little by little that but
Yeah.
skateboard
Yeah.
and BMX bike got more and more dust on it because now I got a car now. I don't want, um so I stopped watching X Games eventually, and then like years later, like 10 years later, it was on, and I put it on with my son. We're watching, and I'm like, oh shit, they can do that now. It's like they just pushed it, and I just lost track of like what they were doing. And every year, I'm sure there was new kids kind of pushing the boundaries. So I look at music the same way. I'm like, I'm sure the boundaries of music are being pushed, and the genres are being mixed in ways that
Yeah.
I've never thought of,
See,
so
that's what I was just gonna say is if it seems like there's so many there's a lot of hip hop artists today that are starting to blend into the country sound, and it's happened years ago, a little here and there, but now it's become so mainstream where these rappers they're going from having a rap background to now they're kind of going into this southern country sound, and I wonder if that's done on purpose because I guess look at it from a record label's perspective. Why have this rapper right here who captures this big of an audience? Well, what if he started making this kind of a sound? Would he also capture that audience as well as his original? And it makes me wonder if in 10, 15 years, having genres of hip hop and rock and country, if that's going to be blended to a certain extent where, not that it's some conspiracy, but where the record labels are pushing this because of the money that could be coming in. You know what I mean? Does that make sense at all?
it does, because I think they've done it in the past. I mean, I think
Yeah.
artists like, well, Wu-Tang, weirdly enough, they like broke boundaries too, because a lot of people in the metal scene loved Wu-Tang, and I was
Right.
scene, and a lot of and Rage Against the Machine was like the opposite. Like a lot of people in the hip hop scene liked Rage, and so it was like you kind of get two audiences. You end up getting
Mhm.
fans from both, and I see that with country too, where like a lot of people are like, oh, let me get a little bit more country. Look at Taylor Swift, right? Taylor Swift was super country, and then like, well, I can extend my audience even further if I get less country sounding and more pop sounding. So then she's
Yeah.
getting more pop sounding, so now she still has that country audience, and now she has the pop audience, and you see people do the opposite too, where they're like pop stars, and then they end up collaborating with a country artist, and or doing a country song, and next thing you know,
Mhm.
the audience from the country scene looking at them too. So it's it's a mixture. Even in heavy metal, there's a little bit of that, where you look at Five Finger Death Punch a little bit, and there's been the band Hell Yeah. There's a couple other bands that I'm sure that even get the southern audience even more, but they kind of have like almost like similar themes to like country in regards to being very patriotic and that type of stuff. So yeah, I mean, sometimes well, if you're mixing genres, the nice thing is you will end up getting fans from both sides and of the genre.
Same thing with podcasting. Same concept.
Yeah. Well, Joe Rogan, when I first started listening to Joe Rogan, that was one of the things I loved about him. It wasn't just a MMA podcast. It wasn't just
Right.
a comedy podcast where you only had comedians on. It wasn't just a history podcast. It was all of those things, and everyone would be different. And I was the same way, where I was curious in a lot of different things. So I couldn't see myself doing one type of show, and then being like, okay, now I'm stuck talking about this forever, because
Hmm.
and yet there's this other thing that I'm super curious about or interested in, but I can't go down that rabbit hole. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think most people are like that, that we have more than one interest. I mean, I'm sure obviously there's a lot of people out there that are just obsessed with one thing, but I definitely think it probably stunts your mental growth just being into one thing, just being a bookworm and being like, oh, I'm all about history. That's all I do. Oh, you don't like music? No, I don't. I've met people who don't like music. I think they're
Yeah.
the weirdest people on earth. I'm like, I don't know what it is about people who don't like music. Like, I get it. Like, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and so music kind of takes a back seat. But a lot of times of late, the last couple of years, but I'm like, dude, like, I love music. I still love music, and if I'm with the kids or the wife in the car, like, we're listening to music. Obviously, they don't want to hear a conspiracy theory podcast or learn about it. So to me, it's like, I still, when you meet somebody who like doesn't listen to podcasts, doesn't listen to music, I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm like, how do you, like, what do you do in the car? You just drive? Like, no, I'm like, that drive can be much more enjoyable if you have some music you enjoy, going along with it, so, um, yeah, I know quite a few people. I'm just like, oh, what type of music you're into? Oh, whatever's on the radio. I'm like, then you don't like music.
Yeah.
If you tell
Right.
whatever my wife gets so pissed because I tell her, because she's one of those people. She likes whatever's on the radio. I'm like, you don't really. She's like, but I love music. I listen to music all the time. I'm like, but you don't get it. I'm like, you are not seeking out music you like. You are being fed whatever music you like. I'm like, they're deciding for you. They're like, this is what you're gonna like. We're gonna keep playing on the radio and tell you this is what's hip and cool and this is the new thing. And then you just end up just taking it in, and and then there's some popular music that is good. I'll hear stuff and I'm like, it's actually really catchy, or that's a really creative beat or whatever. But for the most part, it's awful. And it's awful, it's repetitive. You know what trick they use a lot, and I guess it's not just in pop music and popular music, but they'll just repeat stuff over and over again because everybody loves
Yeah.
that they can sing along with. So you have a really like simple part where you can get people like sing along, like you hear it once, you already know the words, And so I remember doing when I did a podcast with Eddie Bravo years ago, before when he still thought the Earth was round, and and yeah, this is round Earth Eddie Bravo. But I remember talking about this. Like a lot of people think that they enjoy music because of the beat or whatever, and it's like a lot of times it's just because it's like something that sounds familiar, like it's repeated over and over again. So it's familiar to you, and your brain will confuse something that's familiar with you enjoying it. It's like you think you like it, but you only like it because it's familiar. But you hear it all over the place. I mean, you'll hear songs that's like on a commercial, and it's on the radio and whatever, and then all of a sudden, eventually, you start singing it, and you're like, I didn't even like this song, but now I'm like mumbling it, and it's just because it's been like almost force fed to you. So, yeah, it's so what are some of the hip hop artists you grew up or that you like now? Is there any that you listen to now, or you like Jeff?
Yeah, it varies. It depends on what I'm doing. It's either podcast or music, and mostly music if it's if I'm exercising or trying to just I'm not trying to focus too much on it. But back in the day, I grew up with Bone Thugs and Harmony. That was it for me. And then from there, it went to other that type of music. So Do or Die, Twista. So a lot of the fast kind of fast rap music, and then it's kind of gone in different waves throughout the time. Today, it's like I'm a really big fan of Yellow Wolf, which is funny that I mentioned that because he has had kind of an album that goes into rock music a little bit, but I feel like he did it so well. And like Eminem is a big fan. I'm from Minnesota, so locally there's a group called Atmosphere. Was just the producer Ant and then Slug, and he's been around forever, and so it's pretty open with who I like. But it's definitely, I always told everybody, if you hear it on the radio, that's not what I like. I'm all about it for the lyrics and the meaning behind the song, and especially a storytelling song. It's like that's it for me. If it makes you hit the rewind button, that's a win in my book.
Jeff, you said you like to stay within your genre, and so what's your go-to albums or artists?
It just depends on the mood, but usually Maiden, Metallica, Led Zeppelin, Ozzy, Dio. I found this new Swedish band, Crazy Licks. They're pretty awesome.
Well, I feel I just saw one of their videos pop up on YouTube, and I started watching it. You ever get into like King Diamond or Napalm Death?
Oh yeah, Merciful Fate. Yeah, I'm into all that stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so my Judas, I'm assuming Priest, Judas Priest.
Oh yeah, big Priest fan.
Oh, see, yeah. So my cousin, I have family in Long Island, and my cousin, he's a nasty guitarist. He played in a Judas Priest tribute band called Exciter. He also played in, I believe, he played in Wizard of Oz, which was a Ozzy Osbourne tribute band. But he was nasty. And I remember I wasn't old enough to go to the bars, but when they were setting up, he's like, he knew I was a big metal fan. And there's not a lot of us in our Portuguese family that were big metal fans. So he was all excited. And I would only see him from time to time when we would go to New York to visit our family there. And he's like, dude, you got to hear this guy sing. And this guy, like, the singer was like phenomenal. And they would like kind of mess around a little bit, play a little bit before the show and while they're setting up. So I got to see some of that, and then I would have to leave. But it was awesome. Like there's something about like live music that's that, you know, a lot of times you don't get it. It's weird to say that because it's like what is it that you don't get? But there's something about the energy that sometimes an album doesn't really capture, like when you're just listening to it. And I forget who it was. I think it was Linkin Park who might have said this, Chester or somebody that I listened to. I remember saying this, and it was like such a really good point. They're like, we spend like millions of dollars trying to get the perfect sound on the album, right? Like you get like the miking of a drum set. I mean, that could take forever. I mean, just miking a drum set could take forever, like getting the perfect sound or whatever. And you know, Metallica, Lars was like notorious for like being super anal about his drum set and like making sure he got the right sound. And then people will get their phone and play the song out of their freaking speaker. And it's like, dude, we spend millions of dollars, like tons of brain power, like trying to gather you know, the best minds to get the best sound ever, and then you listen out of a fucking stupid speaker from your phone that sounds like I'm like, you know, and it's funny because I was thinking about that. I'm like, dude, he's so right. Like, think about how much that must piss you off when you're like you're spending hours like, oh, let me get the right amp, let me get the right tuning, the right guitar, all these little nuances that there's no way that little bullshit speaker from your phone is gonna like, you know, pick up on any of those little things. And it's just like it's so true. That's why I actually enjoy I'm sure, I don't know about you guys, but I used to love listening to music in headphones because I would pick up on things I wouldn't pick up like just listening to it on regular speakers, you know, sometimes because with the headphones, like you don't hear any other thing, so you're not distracted. And sometimes I'd pick up on like weird things I just never picked up on, like maybe some keyboard in the background or something. I'm like, oh, I never even knew that was there, you know. So I love to listen to music on headphones. But I also love, like you said, like I love listening to music in cars. Like every car I have, like one of the most important things is having a good sound system because that I'm like, it has to be at least halfway decent. I have a work pickup truck and I can't figure out where the hell the subwoofer is. I'm like, look, there's somebody put a subwoofer in it, and whoever had it before me, and it has a stock all range speakers, but it has a subwoofer somewhere, so it adds like so it's like if you listen to hip hop or you listen to anything that where the bass matters, it sounds awesome. Or even with like, you know, metal with the double bass and stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, like if this doesn't have a subwoofer, I'm like, I'd kill myself like in this truck. I'm like, I would never listen to music because it would sound like shit, you know. But when you have that like that loud thump, you know, I got the hip hop thing. Like you would hear guys and the whole trunk is rattling, and you know, but for people who didn't know, you actually don't hear the rattling in the car. That's us outside. Right. So everybody's like, oh, you know, like who wants to hear all that rat? I'm like, no, you don't hear the rattling in the car. You just hear the bass. But it would bring music to life, you know, and people would produce beats knowing that it's going to be heard in a car with a sound system, you know, with subwoofers. So they would try to get like, you know, beats and a bass tone that would just freaking just move your body, you know, just like everything would shake. And I love that. I remember just the other day I was listening to like old Prodigy, and they have some songs that like really thump, or even Pendulum's another one. I don't like electronic. I don't know what genre. They're kind of falling between a couple different genres, but Pendulum, they have an album that like the bass just hits so hard, so you get excited. You're like, oh, this is that song. It's gonna hit hard, you know. And so to me, it's I don't get people who don't care about like the sound quality, you know. But our keyboardist, when I was playing music growing up, our keyboardist, his parents were still like old school, where they would like listen to records. They would sit around the stereo, listen to records, like them and a couple friends. And I'm like, that's so awesome. I'm like, as a music fan, I'm like, nobody my age does that. I'm like, nobody sits around and listens to a song. I'm like, are you kidding me? We can't even like hang out without staring at our phones, never mind like pay attention to a song, you know. So I miss those days of getting an album, trying to open it, because those damn CDs were always so hard to open with all the freaking seals. I remember how I'm like, how come nobody's redesigned this? I was so frustrating trying to open out and then trying to open up a CD without breaking the case was always. I'm like, oh, I broke another one. What the fuck? It's like
that thin layer of plastic that would encase the CD was so frustrating back. Unless you had a knife with you or something, it was so hard to open that.
I would try to open on the way home, and I'd be like pissed because I'm like, oh, I broke the case, But I used to love that whole experience of, and it's funny because I haven't had a musician on in a while, but I'm sure, Chelsea, the singer of Chelsea Grin, which is a heavy metal band, they're like a deathcore band. We have some mutual friends. They've been hitting me up saying I got to get him on, and I'm pretty sure I saw him live at Warped Tour a few times, but I guess he was very anti-COVID lockdowns and mask wearing and all that stuff, and people in the music industry gave him a lot of pushback because of it. So people have been hitting me up and like, hey, got to get this guy on. So we actually connected. I'm hoping to get him on soon. But I'm curious if writing music has changed because back in the day people used to write albums, and now I'm curious if like anybody does that anymore. Like you would have like, oh, you knew like, okay, this is our opening song, this is like our last song on the album, and it would be like a journey, right? You're going on a band, like you listen to the open and then you have the middle, whatever, and every song would be slightly different, and you read the lyrics, and that everything was thought out, where like even the order of the songs was all thought out. It wasn't like just thrown together, because it was all about like they knew people were going to listen to this in order, and you're trying to have like some type of logic in the ordering of the music. And now people just listen to a song. I'm curious if like people don't even write albums anymore. You just write individual songs and throw them out there. I haven't bought an album in a long time. A buddy of mine just told me Jeff, I don't know if I'm sure Machine Head is, that they just came out with a new album. I love Machine Head. They're a very underrated band, but they just came out with an album, and I'm like, oh, apparently people are still writing albums. Somebody breaking in?
No, it's the wind is opening my door. But I'm going to take this time. I'm going to turn the game on here. I'm going to check out. But Ricky, it was really fun being on. I'll definitely be on again. I've been listening to you guys, you and many other people, Charlie, and pretty much everybody in that circle for years now. So it's good to get on, good to talk to you, and I'll definitely be on the next one here.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to do my best to find a time that works for everybody, a day and time that works for everybody.
Sure.
It's hard because I know weekends are better for some people, weekdays are better for others. It's hard to know, but yeah, I'll definitely try to give everybody a little bit more notice and see what works for everybody on the next one. And thanks for joining us, and thanks for all these years, and hopefully we'll reconnect again in the near future.
Yeah, we definitely will. Thanks, Charlie. See you later.
Hey, thanks. Oh, we still here. Oh, it's come from you, Jeff. Awesome. So, Jeff, what you listen to Priest? You listen to any do you stay in that era of metal, or do you listen to any newer metal at all?
Yeah, I'm starting to venture out. I mean, I'll listen to something for like about a minute, and then I don't know if I like it or not, and then I'll pursue it. Like I seen this dude the other day. It was from that band Ghost. He was at a baseball game. I guess he was throwing out the first pitch, and I was like, "Who the hell is this guy?" So I went online, looked him up, and I was like, "Oh, from Ghost." I never heard of these guys. So I started, listening to some of them. Pretty badass group.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Yeah. Have you ever, if you like the same type of metal I like, because I like, like you said, the traditional stuff. I love the Maidens, the Metallicas, kind of the riff heavy stuff. I love like just great guitar work, drums. Like I want to hear good musicianship. Have you ever listened to like Bullet for My Valentine?
Never heard of it.
Yeah, you got to listen to Bullet for My Valentine. Another band's called Trivium. Trivium's really good. These are newer bands that I think people who like older metal will like. They're like, if some of the bands you grew up loving like slowly just transition to modernize a little bit, I think this is kind of what it would sound like. Bullet for My Valentine's awesome. I remember when they first came out, I was a huge fan of theirs because I'm like, they sound Maiden-esque in regards to like the riffs and stuff like that. I'm like, you could hear the
Oh
influence.
wow.
I believe they're from the UK, actually. Are they? Maybe I have to look into that. But Tribune's another one. As Lay Dying, one of my all-time favorites. As Lay Dying. If you want to hear one song, if you only listen to one song from As Lay Dying, there's a song called Confined. Personally, it's like one of my favorite metal songs ever of all time. Like it's just the way it starts, it's so badass. And the way it progresses, and then the way it gets heavy, and then there's a like a catchy chorus that you'd never see coming. Like it's real heavy, and then all of a sudden there's just like the most catchy melody you've ever heard that just you'll be like mumbling forever. And they're badass. And then Soilwork's another one. They're from Sweden. Speaking of Swedish bands, I've seen them quite a few times. Soilwork is another really, really good band. I feel like people who like traditional metal would get into. So Bullet for My Valentine, Trivium, As Lay Dying's a little heavier. There's a lot of screaming, but they're really good too. They have a singer that screams, and the guitarist does the melodies, the clean vocals, and if like I said, you gotta listen to Confined. That album that Confine's on is one of my all-time favorite albums. It's called Shadows Are Security, I believe, or Shadows and Security, something like that. Awesome album. And then so Soilwork, Trivium, As Lay Dying, and who else did I say? Bullet for My Valentine, Trivium, yeah, Soilwork, As Lay Dying. Yeah, I think those.
Well, I'll definitely check them all out.
Yeah, because those four bands, I think if you grew up listening to Priest, if you grow up listening to Metallica, Maiden, those are bands that even if you don't like them, you'll appreciate the inspiration from those older bands. You can hear. I like hearing like bands like, Trivium and Bullet for My Valentine, and I'm like, oh yeah, these guys definitely grew up listening to Maiden, or these guys definitely grew up with. Another one is and actually they're local. They're Kill Switch Engage. Kill Switch Engage is another great band. They're from Massachusetts. They have a recording studio nearby, in Westfield, not too far from where I live. And actually, it's where I was this morning for a soccer game, which is why I'm almost losing my voice. A lot of screaming while coaching this weekend. But yeah, Kill Switch Engage is another awesome like modern metal band that I think people who like traditional metal would definitely like. And then All That Remains is pretty good too. All That Remains, I've had the guitarist on my show, Mike Martins. He was on years ago. He's actually from Ludlow, where I live, and he's another really good band that I think people would like. So definitely, there's definitely some good music out there. The pros and cons of everybody being able to kind of, have the ability to release their music independently is like the pros are like, I don't need the radio to like my band, to put it out there and for people to give it a shot and listen to it. I can record it myself, I can release it myself. I don't need the backing of a record label or whatever. But the cons are, of course, like there's so much music out there. It's like, how do you filter out through the bad stuff to get to the good stuff, and it's like, sometimes I'll go music hunting and I'll be like, listen, I've been so deep into conspiracies or history or podcasts that I'm like, I've really neglected music for a while. I'm like, let me go see what's new, what's good. And then you're looking around, you're like, okay, no, I don't like these guys. No, I don't like these guys. No, I don't like these guys. I don't like, and I'm like, damn it, is there any good music out there? And then you find that one band and you're like, oh crap, like I found one, but there're just so many bands. That's where like going to shows, I miss going to shows a little bit, because it would be really easy to kind of keep up with up and coming bands, because basically, the opening bands were usually up and coming bands, so you'd be like, oh, I've never heard of these guys. And then you're like, oh shit, these guys are pretty good. I didn't come here to see them, but they're pretty good. And now I'm going to keep eye out on them, or I'll end up, enjoying them and buying some merch or buying their album. And then I become a fan. So, and same thing with the festivals. The festivals are cool because you're there to see a couple bands, but then there's a lot of artists that maybe you don't know, and you watch them live. You're like, oh crap, like these guys are pretty cool. So, but there has been some bands that I've seen live, and I'm like, yeah, these guys are all are pretty good. Yeah, they're all right. And then I buy their album, like, No, they're better live. It's like, some bands like you can't capture that energy on an album, so it's weird. Metal is one of those genres that uh even if you're a mediocre metal band, live it's just so much fun. Oh, another good band,
Exactly.
another band, Miss May I. I've had the singer on the show. They're another band similar to As Lay Dying, really good, and they're another band that really stay true to like traditional metal in regards to like riffs and just really fun music. Like you listen to them, it just like it punches you in the face. It's like combination of like thrash metal and stuff like that. It's you see like hints of like the artists that we grew up liking. So they're out there. It takes a little bit of work to find them.
Exactly. That's where where Pandora or Sirius XM, all that. I mean, they'll play some stuff and it'll be like, "Oh, what is that? Who's this?" You know. Yeah, I get what you're saying. You ever listen to any metal church?
I feel like I have. I've listened to Whitechapel, which
Okay.
sounds but metal. I feel like metal. I've they're 80s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I can't recall any of their songs, but
Gods of War was a really big song by them.
I'd have to listen to it and see. But I definitely know the name. Were you a Megadeth fan? Dave was just on Rogan not too long ago.
Yeah, I am. Actually, he's got a ranch not too far from where I live where you can go out there and go camping and he comes out at night and uh, does sing songs, plays music around the campfire and stuff like that. But yeah, man, he's got a big ranch out here and has a lot of experiences where you can come hang out and camp all weekend at his ranch.
Are you were you one of those people that you pick teams, Metallica or Megadeth, or you enjoyed them both?
There's no picking a side on the big four like that. You can't pick a side. You just go with it.
Yeah, no, I hear. And they're very different too. They're not as similar as people think they are. Like Metallica's they were much darker earlier, and then they kind of got a little poppy a little bit. The Load and Reload. I think I saw it. Sam Tripoli wearing a Load I don't know if it was a Load or Reload T-shirt, a Metallica T-shirt, and I'm like, I remember watching I don't know if it was one of his podcasts with Brian Callen or whoever, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, dude, Sam, somebody didn't warn you. You don't wear that Metallica shirt. That's not the cool. You wear Ride the Lightning. You wear And Justice for All. You don't wear Load or Reload. I'm like, those are the albums they were accused of selling out. That's when everybody started hating them. So it was funny. I'm like, maybe it was on sale because nobody who likes Metallica would wear it. But it's funny. Both those albums had some songs I liked. I'm like, they weren't. What's your opinions on them? Did you like them, or did you think like, no, this was definitely a changing of their sound? And
To me, yes. I kind of like lost interest. I mean, their old school stuff. Um, yeah, I was all into that. Justice for all that, all them albums. That was the good era of Metallica. Um, and then when they started putting these other albums out, I was just like, yeah. It was like you. There'd be like maybe one or two good songs on it, but other than that, it was to me it was garbage. I was like, nah, go back to your old ways. That was the music. The S&M CDs I thought was phenomenal. I really got into those. I don't know what you thought about them, but I thought they was really good.
yeah, no, I liked it. I they came around again almost where they experimented with some stuff, and but I feel like it was closer to their old stuff than what that era was during Load and Reload. I just Load and Reload, it wasn't even thrash metal. I'm like, you guys were a thrash metal band. Like, you're not even thrash metal anymore. And at least if you were heavy, but I'm like, you're not even heavy anymore. You're just like, I mean, I hate to call it like pop metal, but it was like just like rock music with like distorted guitar and heavy drums. Like it was just not, it wasn't my thing. I'm like, it just doesn't sound heavy anymore. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I wasn't a fan of Load and Reload. Like you said, there's there was definitely I could pick out a song or two that I'm like, oh, this isn't bad. But and then most of it was like it was radio friendly stuff. I mean, Fuel was like one of the worst songs ever. Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire. Like, are you
Yeah.
serious? I'm like, those lyrics, did you just like take a shot of whiskey and then just write that down? Just those are most pointless lyrics I've ever heard. I'm like, is there some deep metaphor that I'm not picking up on? Because that sounds horrendous, And so it's yeah, there's definitely some songs, and then obviously Sandman, Enter Sandman was like a huge hit, and I mean I don't hate it, it's a catchy song, and it's a really catchy riff, but it's not And Justice for All. I mean, give well, I literally because of the song One is the reason I picked up a guitar. Like that song and that solo, like at the end of the song was so badass that I'm just like, you know, it just I couldn't even freaking put words to it. It was crazy. You know what the part I'm talking about, right? At the end, they start doing just
Yes.
when the double bass starts. I'm like, dude, like what? I remember the first time I heard it, even just the video, I was like freaking out. I'm like, dude, like this is crazy. I'm like, I've never heard anything this dark, and all the little samples of people, the gunshots and samples of like war sounds, and I'm like, this is insane. And then when that double bass starts, it's like, now everybody does it. But I'm like, at that time, I'm like, I've never heard anything like it. And then that solo comes in. I'm just like, what the fuck? I'm like, it was just and that whole album, that song gets a lot of credit, but that whole album was just badass. Like, there's not one song in that album I don't like. And so yeah, if somebody hasn't gone back and listened to the old Metallica stuff, if you got into Metallica later in their career, I'm like, go back and listen to that older stuff. Honestly, it's so different than their new stuff. Somebody who likes the new stuff might not even like the old Metallica because it's not the Metallica that they know. It's like so different than what they think Metallica is, because today's Metallica is much catchier and just like kind of poppy a little bit. But back in the day, it was fast, it was dark, and he had a deep voice in that era where everybody had a high pitched voice. Bruce Dickinson, like, yeah, great singer, but everybody kind of had that type of singing style where it was like that higher pitch voice, and Metallica comes in and he has this deep voice, and you're like, oh, this is different. I've never heard a heavy metal band sound like this. So and there were, I'm sure, in like the underground, like Napalm Death has been around since, I don't know, like the early 80s or whatever. And I mean, that was death metal, that was like early death metal. And so it definitely existed, but there wasn't a lot of bands that sounded like Metallica at that time. I mean, even Dave from Megadeth, much different sounding vocals than James Hetfield.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, anything else you want to talk about before we head out?
No, are you a baseball fan?
No. Well, we did recently go to a Mets game because my father-in-law is a huge Mets fan. So every year he does a trip, and I brought my kids and my wife, and we all went up there, which was fun because the baseball games live are much better than watching on TV, in my opinion. And when you see how big the stadiums are and all that stuff, it's really cool. But you a big baseball fan?
Yeah, Yankees.
Yankees. Okay, yeah. So you're the
Yeah.
the Mets rivals.
Oh yeah, yeah. I didn't know if you followed the Red Sox or.
Yeah, like being from Massachusetts, like I follow all the Boston teams, so I'll follow the Red Sox, I'll follow the Patriots and the Celtics, Bruins, Revolution, all that stuff. But it's funny, my kids are kind of like Mets fans now because we follow the Red Sox, but we're not like huge into Red Sox in a baseball. So like they haven't really picked a team yet. So my father-in-law is trying to convert them to the Mets. So we bought them some Mets hats and all that stuff, and they've been to a Mets game. They've never been to a Red Sox game. So, which, according to what everybody else tells me, we're not missing out on much because even though it's a historic stadium, it's not the nicest one. So the Mets stadium. What is it? Mets Fieldhouse, or right? Is that what it's called?
I'm not sure what their new stadium is.
It's.
I remember their old stadium, Shea, but
Do you go to Yankees games when they come to town?
I'd like to, but they're always sold out. I mean, they sell out almost like a year in advance. So it's, I mean, you can get tickets to them, but you're gonna sit where you can't see anything. So
Yeah,
I'll just watch it on TV.
yeah. Back to what Taylor said. Like you're better off just watching on TV. Yeah.
Yeah, same way like with the UFC. I've never been. I would like to go, but you could see it better on TV. So I just avoid the crowds and sit home and watch it.
And that's super accurate because I've been to been to a couple Bellator events and one UFC event. And if you're not far enough where you can see over the cage, it kind of sucks because because of the cage and the pillars, you can't really see much. And I had a friend of mine who goes to a lot of live events. He's like, dude, you don't want to be that close. He's like, you want to be able to see over the cage. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, if you're too close, you can't see shit. And because the guys will be like on the ground on the other side of the cage, and you can't see anything. You don't know what's going on. And yeah, I'm the same way. The nice thing about UFC and watching it live, because there's a lot of intricate stuff that can happen during a MMA match that you don't pick up on a TV, So it's definitely one of those things where live you can, or watching it live, you'll miss out on a lot, and then watching it on TV where they replay stuff and they talk about, a technique or something that they did. You're not going to pick up on like a eye poke or something like that live. You're gonna have to when it's on TV, they'll replay things over and over again. So it's definitely
Right.
helpful. So yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to it. Going to a show live, there is an energy in the building, which is fun, and there's the excitement of being there and the lights and all that stuff. But outside of that, yeah, it's like if you really want to pay attention, you're better off watching it at home. How are the?
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
it seems like I said, I've never been to a UFC or a Bellator fight, and I watched both of them. But it just seems like that crowd is super super loud because it seems loud just hearing them on the TV. I couldn't imagine being there and hearing it. Is it that loud?
Yeah, no. This is the thing about from my personal experiences watching it live. The thing about watching it live is like if it's an exciting match, it's awesome to watch it live because like if people, but when I say exciting, like if it's a striking, they're both on their feet, they're getting hit or whatever, then it's fun live because the energy of the whole place just goes up and everybody's loud and screaming and can't, they're waiting in anticipation for the knockout. But if it's a more technical fight, it almost sucks watching live because everybody's complaining. Everybody's like, "Oh, this is so boring," or "Oh, or they're swearing or saying like, "Oh, stop being wusses, get up," or whatever. So it's like it's the energy's either really high or really low. There's like no in middle ground. Either people are bored or they're really excited. Yeah, there's no middle ground. So, but yeah, watch it. I'm sure it's like going to a baseball game. Somebody hits a home run or something like that. It's like it's fun to be there because that energy is contagious and everybody kind of feels it in the building. So I get that aspect of it. It's definitely fun. But I also I get watching it on TV because you can actually pay attention. And if it's a more technical game, if it's not a high scoring game and it's more about strategy and tactics, you can appreciate much more watching on TV where you get all the details, what's going on and all that type of stuff. So how are the Yankees doing this year? Because I don't keep track too much.
Oh, they're in first place. Um, I'm hoping they'll win the division, but I don't know if they're going to win the World Series. I hope they do, but they got a lot of tough teams to get through to win it, and I just don't know if they can do it.
Isn't there a Spanish hitter who's trying to get a home run, right? Like, who's the guy who for the Yankees?
Oh, that's Aaron Judge.
Yeah. What record is he breaking? Or
he just tied Babe Ruth, and now he's one away from tying Roger Maris for the home runs. And yeah, I think he's going to get that, and I think he'll pass it. But right now, the problem is nobody's pitching to him. They're not giving him anything to hit.
Oh, that sucks.
It does. It does. And the dude's just as calm as a cucumber about it all, man. And he, deep inside that he's got like gotta have like a million emotions just going 150 miles an hour, and but he just takes it like it's no big deal. But I'm sure it's heat, man.
Yeah, Jeter was one of those guys, a Yankee guy that even people from Boston liked. Like we appreciated how respectful he was, how he always played the right way, he always said the right thing. He was one of those guys who like if he was on my team, I would definitely be a fan. So we don't hate all the Yankees down here. There are some Yankee players that we respect and we like. And Judge seems like one of those guys too. Like he always seems like he's smiling, always in a good mood, always seems that he doesn't seem like he has a big head at all. So it's nice to see those type of players.
Yeah, it is. But no, man, that's about all I got. Maiden's in town tonight, thinking about going to that.
Yeah, somebody just told me that they're on tour again because the last show I went to was 2019 Maiden when they came to Massachusetts. Like I went with my son, and that was the last concert I went to. So and then somebody was just telling me they're like, "Oh, Maiden's on tour again." I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "Dude, those guys." I mean, I love seeing that because it's like it's almost like a guy who works construction his whole life. You're like, "Oh, he must like just be so." Happy to retire, and then they retire and like, oh dude, like I got to keep moving, I got to do something. I feel like I'm losing my purpose. I feel like some of these older musicians are the same way. It's like they could retire, but they feel like something will be missing. And if you're in good enough health where you can do it, why not?
Yeah, exactly. And them guys are getting up there in the years, man. That you don't know. You got to go just because you don't know how much longer they're going to go.
You're right. Yeah. If one of them get hurt or they get sick or whatever, and then they don't tour anymore. Yeah, you never know. And sometimes they say it's their final tour, and then they go on like 8 other final tours, and you keep going to the show thinking it's going to be the last one. And you're like, dude, you keep tricking me into buying these tickets because you keep telling me it's going to be your last tour. So I know some bands are notorious of doing that, but I don't see Maiden doing that. I definitely think that eventually if they do retire they'll announce it and actually retire. But if I'm sure it keeps them young because it takes a lot of energy to play for as long as they do. Anybody who's ever played an instrument sounds easy, but like try playing for hour and a half, moving around, sweating, you got lights on you that you know warm you up even more. It's not an easy thing to do. I remember playing a hour show even when I was young, and I'd be exhausted after playing. It takes a lot out of you.
Oh yeah, sure does.
But the nice thing, it gives them a reason to stay in shape. Gives them because I'm sure they're stretching. I'm sure they're doing some cardio. I'm sure they're doing something so they're physically able to do that. So it gives them a reason to stay in shape too. If they weren't touring, maybe they would just let themselves go a little bit because they're like, okay, I don't really need to be in shape. So it's good. But those guys are big soccer fans too. I don't know if I've ever told this on air, but so there's a dealership in Connecticut that I go down to, a Jaguar dealership, and it's the only local one. So I would go down there, and I got friendly with the service guys and stuff like that. And they know I'm a big soccer fan, and so this was like after I saw them live. They were I saw them in Massachusetts, then they were playing in Hartford in Connecticut, and so I'm down there, and like after that weekend that they were in Hartford, and I'm at the Jaguar dealership, and like, oh, you're a big soccer guy. You're like, oh, I just played soccer with some big metal band, and I'm like, what the fuck are you? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I guess they're in town and they wanted to stay in shape. They wanted to put together a pickup game, so they gathered. There's like some semi pro like small little club that's in Connecticut that they gathered some guys from there and then said, hey, if you want to bring any other guys, bring some guys in. We'll play some soccer. And he's like, oh, they're pretty good. They're actually really good. They stay in shape. And I'm like, metal band playing soccer, and I'm thinking to myself. I looked at him and I remember I was like the service manager. I'm like, are you fucking telling me that you played soccer with Iron Maiden? Because I'm like, I just saw them and they were in Hartford the weekend that you were referring to. He's like, He's like, oh, I don't know, maybe. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? Maybe. I'm like making a big deal. This dude like has no idea who Iron Maiden is, and he just like could care less. And I'm like, that would be a dream come true to be able to play
Right.
a soccer game with Iron Maiden, and this guy just like could care less. I'm like, dude, for a Maiden fan, imagine that. Like, you know, just to hang out in a casual atmosphere like that and just hang out and like, you know, probably have a drink afterwards. I'm like, dude, that'd be, and apparently they're really, he's like, dude, they're really good. He's like, they're old, but they're really good. And I'm like, that's how they stay in shape, I guess. You know, you're touring and then you're playing pickup soccer from time to time. I'm like, that's pretty wild that they're still in good enough shape to do that.
That's a sport that I never really got into. When they have that big tournament, what is that? They don't have it every year, do they?
Well, you're in luck, Jeff, because it's coming up. The World Cup is going to be in the winter this year because it's going to be in Qatar, and Qatar, as you know, and talk about conspiratorial stuff. There's a lot of conspiracy theories on how Qatar got basically got to pick got chosen as the World Cup location. There's a lot of conspiracies, a lot of corruption, a lot of different, but the pros and cons of it are that at least you get to watch the World Cup in the winter when there's not really much to do. You know, you're just stuck inside if you live in New England. So it's like at least we have something to watch because a lot of times, well, all the time, the World Cup's in the summer. So it's like you're going on vacation, you're out and about, you're outside, you're whatever, and then you missed a lot of the games. But being in the winter might not be a bad thing. But yeah, it's coming up. So in a couple months or in another month, I think the World Cup starts, and it'll be fun because it's like even if you don't know anything about soccer, it's fun to watch because you can root for a country, right? Like, oh, I like Italy. I'm a little bit Italian, you know what? I'm rooting for Italy, you know, or I'm a little bit French, so I'm rooting for France, you know. And so it's really easy for people to just kind of pick a team and root for them. And you got the best players in the world, and you're playing for you're not playing for money, you're playing for pride of your country, you know. So it means a little bit more, you know, when you win for in the World Cup, and also it's every 4 years, so like these guys know that if you're a little older, you might not play the next World Cup. You know, you might get hurt and not play the next World Cup. So if you're playing in the World Cup, it's a one in a lifetime opportunity. So keep a lookout for that.
Yeah, I've seen the last one, and I don't understand the game at all. But like you said, I mean, it's got just this, it's got like a glow about it when it's that World Cup. I mean, I would never guess that many people was really into soccer. But yeah, I mean, I get into it. I watch it and everything. But like I said, I don't know anything about it. I mean, it's cool though.
Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, basically, it's you're trying to kick the ball into the goal. I mean, it has offsides, so it's similar to kind of like offsides for like hockey a little bit. But it's you know, it's pretty simple. The beautiful thing about soccer is that it's not a sport that you can do it on your own. You need everybody to be involved. It's the ultimate team sport in regards to like everybody needs to do their job to win. And because sometimes you might go a whole game without scoring, when somebody does score, it's a big deal. You know, it's like the same thing with like a knockout in MMA. Like you might go watch a whole pay-per-view card, not one knockout. So then when there is a knockout, it's huge because you might not see another one, you know. So it's rare. So that's what makes it fun. And the World Cup is just it's a blast because like you know everybody's watching it. So I mean, let me just put things in perspective. Like when the World Cup, they have when they have the ball, they draw these balls to figure out who's playing who, right? That they televise that. They have more people, like, and like a lot more people watch the ball drawing of the World Cup than people who watch the Super Bowl. Like, think about just put that. It's not a game. It's just a ball drawing. That's it. Like, and they have more people who watch the ball drawing than the Super Bowl. So, like, that's how big of a sport it is. You know, I mean, literally,
Oh, wow.
you know, outside of America, it's the biggest sport in just about every country. You know, like you have some exceptions, but for the most part, it's like every country in the world, they all play soccer. Like, and if I meet people from India, Nigeria, Lebanon, China, wherever, I could talk soccer with them. Everybody watches soccer. So it's like we can talk about the Champions League. We can talk about, you know, whoever the best player is in the world. We can talk about the Premier League, all these other leagues and teams. You know, everybody talks about Manchester United and Liverpool and Man City and whoever. You know, like this is a hoodie from I have a team, my team in Portugal. They're my favorite team in Portugal. Sporting Club of their full name is Sporting Club of Portugal, Sporting Clube de Portugal, and like you meet somebody from Europe, it's like, oh, we can talk about sporting, we can talk about whoever, so it's fun. It brings it's similar to music where it's like it doesn't matter your religion, nationality, and that stuff. You have this love for this one thing, and and it brings people together from all over the world. Like metal music's like that. Maiden's huge all over the world. Metallica's huge all over the world. Like it's cool to meet somebody who's from Asia or somebody who's from Africa, and they love the same Maiden albums that you love, and they like it's awesome. It's so cool how it can bring everybody together.
Oh yeah, man. Like I said, I mean, the last World Cup, we was in a bar having a few drinks, and I didn't know it was going on, and everybody started coming in. They all had on these different soccer jerseys and everything, and I mean, that place just filled right up with all these soccer fans and everything, and it was just kind of cool, man. I mean, you kind of got into it, even though you didn't really know what the hell was going on, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, hopefully you start watching this winter, and well, it's hard because in America there's a lot of winter sports. Basketball starts, there's football, so there's a lot of stuff to kind of watch. But if you get a chance, yeah, watch a little bit of soccer. It's a beautiful sport. They call it the beautiful sport because I think it's when you see the passing and everybody working together and all the movements and stuff like that, it really is a awesome sport. And it's cool because of the history of it. Like a lot of these clubs are so old. I mean, you're talking about like soccer is one of the oldest sports known to man, and it's these clubs, these teams have been around forever and ever and ever. So you think about like the Celtics. Oh, they played in the 50s and 60s, and it's like, dude, like there's teams that have been around for late 1800s, early 1900s, so it's wild how old some of these teams are. But yeah, well, next time we talk, maybe it'll be it's World Cup time, and I'll have to see if you're watching any games. If not, I'll have to try to pressure you into it and see if I can get you into it.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Sounds good.
Well, thanks for hanging out, Jeff. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and hopefully we see you again on the next one. Hopefully, I'll give everybody a head start in trying to figure out what days and times work for everybody, and we'll hopefully gather a bunch of us. And I think a couple people said on our Patreon page, because they were watching football, that they couldn't, and I think Ronnie said he was watching hockey. So I know sports gets in the way a little bit, so I'm gonna have to time this when it's a off day for sports. But we'll definitely do this again, and keep in touch, Jeff. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to hang out.
Well, thank you for having us today, Ricky. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And have a great rest of your weekend.
You too. Hopefully I can get this up in the next I don't know, the next but I should be able to get it up in the next 24 hours. So keep a lookout for it. It'll be up soon.
Cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff. Take care.
You too.